how do you get out of that? So like one of the last things I want to talk to you about here is just you're doing better now.
Yeah.
You're on the path, you know, as you said, you're going back to the gym. Um, like where does one begin to build themselves back up out of that situation or something similar to it?
Um, so I got handed the LOR, and I had questions and all of that, asked my questions, got my answers and stuff. But everyone kept telling me, like, hey, it's just going to make you a better leader. And in my mind, I'm like, no, like, this is going to keep me from being a leader. I want to be a first sergeant. This is going to take, it's going to take forever for me to make masters so I can become a first sergeant. Um, but you know, a few weeks later, maybe a month later, like I really started to like come around to that idea. Like it is going to make me a better leader, because I think about all my airmen and how they may or may not come into trouble where, they make a bad decision. And now I can empathize with them having to go stand behind a commander's desk, because that's a very surreal feeling. And I never would have been able to do that before. And I want to be a first sergeant. So I just kind of held on to like their words. And even though I didn't quite buy into it yet, I worked as if I did. I went back to, my duty section. And, from the wing to my new duty section, started trying to learn, trying to kind of get settled in it. I got pulled out of NCOA when all of this was happening. So I got pulled out like a week before NCOA graduation happened. So it kind of sucked because I did all the work and all that other stuff, and then I had to redo it, but I got selected again. So I got selected to do NCOA in November. I think it was the tail end of November. I got to do it again. And I exceeded, I had to redo every single assignment. They had all my copies. I talked to my instructor and he was like, you can't use any of the same material. You need to do everything all over again. So I had to redo absolutely everything.
Wow.
And it was time consuming because I was also in graduate classes as well. I wasn't expecting to get selected so soon. But I walked away with academic achievement, which is a really big accomplishment. And that just kind of put me on this path of feeling successful, even in that little bit, because although I couldn't control the outcome of what the commander decided, I could control how I reacted to that outcome. And my choice was every single day they're going to realize, one, that they made a good decision, that this is not something that's characteristic of me. And so I don't want them to regret um, showing some form of leniency, if you will. They could have definitely given me an Article 15, but for whatever reason, they chose not to. They chose to consider what was going on. And so I didn't want to make them regret that decision. So there was that, but also how I respond to it is going to be influential to the people that when I got comfortable talking about it, that they would see and look back and, one, hopefully know that they didn't even know that I was going through something. I wanted it so that they could see that life may be really hard. You may need to take a knee, but if you can keep going and you can keep pushing through, you can be successful regardless of what's handed to you. Um, and that's kind of like where my mentality was. So the whole time I was just focused on being there for my people, learning my job, and finishing NCOA, which I did. I came back, and then my supervisor, who was over the shop, she actually was gone on and off for about 5 months. So I got to step in that lead role. And so I ran the shop, barely knowing what I was doing. But it was an excellent challenge for me to learn, to grow. I was holding an E7 role, even though I was an E6, and I feel like I just demolished all trust that they had in me. But I still got that chance, you know what I mean? Um, and I owned it. Well, when I made mistakes, I was like, hey, or if I didn't know what I was doing, I asked, and I celebrated every single day that I walked away and I know I did something right. And so I think that was what also helped me, was those little celebrations every single day when I was like, you know what? We didn't set the shop on fire today. So it was a good day. And then also uh, just looking bigger picture. They kept telling me this is going to make me a better leader. They knew I want to be a first sergeant, and I got to go to the first sergeant's course in this time period too, and just kind of hearing how some of these other first sergeants have paperwork in their past. So yeah, all in all, I think what got me to the point though of where I got comfortable talking about it was I won NCO of the quarter at the group this last quarter. So for the first quarter, and I absolutely like I felt I don't know what's a good word for it, but I just felt like achieved, you know, like I they do trust me, that I can make a mistake and recover, that this doesn't need to be held over my head forever. And really the only person that's going to get in my way is me. And my chief actually told me that. I talked to my chief and she was like, the only person that's going to get in your way is you. And I kind of held on to that too. So I had really supportive leadership through everything. I was very quiet about it up until recently because of all that shame. And I still feel it. You know, I still feel embarrassed. I still have, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I went and talked to one of my chiefs and trying to see about like, you know, the status of the LOR because we're coming up on a year. We're like 9 months, 8 months or whatever. Just wanted to kind of get an idea. We have a change of command coming up. And they were like, no, it's got to stay in for a year. And like, it still hurt, but I still have that shame and I can still see that I've got that like embarrassment and stuff, but I need to learn to own it. I need to learn to like allow it to be my story. And I got asked by the commandant to go and speak to ALS. And so I got to do that too and tell my story there. So just kind of finding different ways to accept it and find little milestones to create for yourself to know that you are succeeding where you are, you know. I think that's probably the most important thing I've learned.